Okay, you're listening to Critical Weight Theory, and today I'm going to be looking at a Netflix series that offers up some real cases, and sometimes they challenge what we think we know about justice, punishment, and the people caught in between. So it's the episode Means to an End, the premiere episode of I Am a Killer, which is available on Netflix. Now, this is a show that I used to actually write recap articles for, and this is an interesting case, so let's get into it. The setup is a little bit unique. There's James Robertson, who has been in prison since he was 16. There was robbery, assault, and those were his first charges. But what happened after that was a slow, brutal spiral into isolation. By the time he killed his cellmate in 2008, he'd already been locked up for decades, 20 years in solitary, over 100 years in accumulated sentences. So this is definitely what they call a serial offender. And the final crime, it wasn't an accident, it was a plan, a means to an end, and that's where the episode gets its title from. Robertson strangled his cellmate with a pair of socks tied into a makeshift garrote, and it's because he wanted to be moved to death row. He wanted to die. So the crime has a unique motive, I suppose you might say. And he did pick somebody who he considered worthy of becoming deceased and all of that, but nevertheless, the primary motive was that he wanted to end his own life. So in December 2008, inside a Florida prison, Robertson shared a cell with Frank Hart. And, the setup was made there. One morning, Hart was found dead. Robertson confessed immediately. He told investigators this was deliberate, that he murdered Hart so the state would sentence him to death. And he didn't just say it once, he repeated it over and over through a 3-year legal battle that ended in 2012 when he got what he asked for, a spot on Florida's prestigious death row. So, what's going on inside his mind? The series does explore that. Why would someone want to be executed? That's what I Am a Killer tries to explore here, and with some success. Through direct interviews with Robertson, we hear the confession in his own words. He's clear, cold, not particularly proud, though also not particularly ashamed. He's more just resigned himself to his fate. To him, death row isn't a punishment, it is an exit, a break from years of being locked away in isolation with no hope of release. One former nurse, Anne Otwell, calls him volatile. His ex cellmate, Robert Lynch, says Robertson was always ready to turn to violence. But it's not just the staff. His cousin is interviewed, and we also meet his attorney, and they paint a picture of a man raised in chaos. You know, his parents were drug addicts, there was emotional abandonment, and a slow drift into hopelessness. The show doesn't excuse the killer, it just tries to explain him. So you have to wonder, is it system failure or system function? Robertson's story forces a question. What happens when someone weaponizes the system to die? This wasn't the state choosing to punish a killer exactly, it was a man choosing execution as his own escape. He was basically begging them to proceed, and that kind of intent complicates the idea of justice, really. Beneath the truth is, even on death row, even after asking to be executed, Robertson is still alive, at least as far as I know. I could not find any, like, current news reports that were from this month or anything like that. So as of late 2024, he's still incarcerated, still waiting, because as much as he wants to go, the system takes its time. So it's a bit of a complicated episode, And sure, you can find critiques of it on IMDb or wherever, but I would recommend checking out this show if you want to get some insight into these murderers, because they actually interview them, and they also take the time to interview other people who were impacted by the case. So it's not just from the guilty person's point of view. So I Am a Killer uses a simple but potentially haunting format, first person confessions layered with context from family, staff, and the legal system. It's not flashy, but it could hit hard for some people, you know? And Means to an End sets the tone for the rest of the series. A man who's seen as the worst of the worst, but who doesn't deny it. He sort of embraces it, and, he's also embraced the inevitable end. So Robertson has actually written a memoir titled The Smiley Faced Man. The title is strange, and I'm sure the content is strange as well. I probably will never get around to reading it because I don't even read around. I don't even read a lot of the classics that I have sitting around the house. I don't read as much as I used to, and I'm trying to get back into that habit. But I've got other things going on. Um, but of course, I think I think it could be an interesting book. I don't know. You might want to check it out if you're curious about this inmate. So, if you want to understand the psychology of someone who not only accepts death row, but demands it, this episode is your entry point, I suppose. So, that's basically all I need to say about this episode. I kind of messed up my words in a few areas, as is the norm. I'm not somebody who speaks and never makes mistakes when speaking. But anyway, hopefully you still enjoyed the insights into the story, and you could always subscribe if you see a subscribe button, or hit the like button. And I will say, at the very least, Robinson was not another inmate who confessed and then tried to take it all back. No, he admitted it. He's not one to hide his criminal behavior. So until next time, stay sharp, and I guess stay out of trouble, because you don't want to end up like this guy.